Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants' lines will be on a listen-only mode. The call is also being recorded, and if you have any objections, you may disconnect. And I'd like to introduce Tip Osterweiler. You may begin. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Operator. Good morning, everyone. Today we're convening for FirstNet's combined board and committee meetings. I want to thank everyone for joining us once again virtually. We hope to be able to resume in-person meetings in early to mid-2021, and we'll certainly announce the venue for future meetings as soon as we possibly can do that. Before we proceed with today's agenda, I want to pause for a moment to personally and on behalf of the entire First Responder Network Authority, thank Ed Horowitz for his exceptional work as board chair over the last 2 years. Under his leadership, FirstNet has made tremendous strides in implementing the National Public Safety Broadband Network. In addition, we've built the relationships and put in place the business processes that will ensure our future success. We're fortunate that Ed has agreed to stay on until the expiration of his term next year, and we will continue to benefit from his vision, experience, and wisdom. On behalf of Public Safety and on behalf of the FirstNet Authority Board, thanks for your continuing service, Ed.
Thank you, Tip. It's an honor to serve.
Okay. During our last board meeting in August, we also held our annual budget meeting, and we passed the fiscal year 2021 budget. This budget ensures continued operations as well as further implementation of our roadmap for future enhancements of the network. Let's jump right into today's agenda. First, we'll discuss key priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. And in addition, we will update our committee assignments, including the appointment of new chairs for several committees. As part of our discussion on committee work, we will vote on an amendment to the Governance and Personnel Committee Charter. Then we will continue our practice of hearing from the public safety community about how the FirstNet network is performing and enabling their work. Following that, we will receive a Public Safety Advisory Committee update from PSAC Chair Todd Early. And finally, we'll receive updates from our Advocacy, Network and Technology, and Finance Committees. Before getting underway, I'd like to ask our Board Secretary to call the roll for the Board and confirm that each committee has a quorum. Janelle?
Good morning, everyone. I will mark you as present. Chair Lisbeth Osterweiler. Vice Chair Rich Carrizo.
Present.
Welton Chase.
Here.
Neil Cox.
Here.
Brian Crawford.
Here.
Vincent De Laurentiis.
Here.
Billy Hughes.
Present.
Karima Holmes. Present. Edward Horowitz.
Present.
Darren Jones.
Present.
Paul Patrick.
Present.
Jessica Rainier.
Present.
Matt Slinkard.
Present.
David Zillette.
Present.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum for the board as well as all 4 committees.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Did you
a reminder for those who are speakers, please mute your phones. We're not speaking. There's some background interference. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Each member of the board now has before him or her the minutes of our August meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes at this time? Hearing none, I'll take a motion that we yes, please.
Interrupt, sorry. I need to read the conflict certification. Can I do that very quickly?
Yes, my apologies for getting ahead of you. Back to you.
No problem. Prior to participating in the FirstNet Authority combined board and committees meeting today, the board members have reviewed the agenda as well as the conflict of interest guidance provided by the Ethics Law and Program Division of the Department of Commerce, Office of General Counsel, regarding the conflict of interest standards that apply to board members. All board members have responded prior to today's meeting that they do not have a conflict and will not need to recuse themselves from participation in any portion of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Okay, returning to the minutes, each member of the board has before him or her the minutes of our August meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes at this time? Hearing none, I will accept a motion that we accept these minutes.
Crawford makes the motion.
Horowitz second to the motion. Okay, Brian Crawford made the motion. Ed Horowitz seconded the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? The August meeting minutes are accepted as written. Madam Secretary, please make the minutes available to the public following this meeting.
I will do that.
Okay, moving on. I want to make a few introductory comments here before we proceed further in the agenda. Starting by saying, in my view, it would be hard to overstate the importance of secure mobile broadband access for law enforcement, fire services, emergency medical services, and those people and organizations that support and enable them. Since our last board meeting only a month ago, the public safety community has had to respond to 2 significant hurricanes along the Gulf Coast, an unprecedented number of fires in the West and Northwest, and widespread civil unrest in multiple cities across the country. In addition, of course, our first responders must remain on the job in the face of a continuing public health emergency. We may be able to conduct our business from our basements and living rooms, but the world our dedicated public safety professionals inhabit is very real. We owe them the very best tools that we can provide. As board chair, I look forward to continuing the work of my predecessor to provide a national public safety broadband network that performs as well or better than the best commercial network, and also offers the additional capabilities that public safety needs to successfully accomplish their critical tasks on behalf of the communities they serve. In the upcoming fiscal year, in addition to ensuring our program remains on schedule and on cost, the board will focus on implementing the roadmap developed in close consultation with the public safety community. We will also continue to listen closely to FirstNet users as their needs evolve, updating the roadmap accordingly. Finally, leveraging the broad experience of our members, we will continuously look for opportunities to adopt best-of-breed technologies and proven business practices in order to create the best possible capabilities for the dedicated men and women we serve. As we embark on the work for this year, I am pleased to have Chief Rich Carrizo by my side as Vice Chair. I had the pleasure of serving alongside Rich on the Technology Committee, and he was an easy choice to become the senior voice of public safety on the board. In addition to his work on the Technology and Advocacy Committees, Rich has been a leading voice in the boardroom for all of public safety. He's an active duty fire chief in Kansas City, Missouri, as well as president and chairman of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. We're fortunate to have him on our board. Rich, I'd welcome your comments.
Thank you, Tip. I do appreciate your appointment and looking forward to it. I want to thank the Department of Commerce and NTIA for the support behind this appointment also. Appreciate everybody on this board and thank them for everything that they continue to do day in, day out. Our public safety people out there on the field, this broadband network, our job is to make their jobs better, easier, and more efficient. So I'm looking forward to continuing this work over the next few years as the Vice Chair. Again, thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Chief. We appreciate your comments, and we certainly appreciate your presence and hard work on the board. As our next order of business, let's turn for a moment to committee assignments. Before getting into the details regarding committee assignments and board chairs, I need to take a moment to introduce a proposed amendment to the Governance and Personnel Committee Charter. The current charter requires that the board chair serve as the Governance and Personnel Committee chair. The proposed amendment to the charter allows for the board chair to designate a board member to serve as the Governance and Personnel Committee chair. In order to move forward with implementing the amendment, we must vote on two resolutions. We'll start with the Governance and Personnel Committee resolution, resolution number 11. Before we vote, do any Governance and Personnel Committee members have any questions or comments regarding the proposed resolution? Hearing none, we are prepared to vote on Governance and Personnel Committee Resolution 11. Madam Secretary, would you please read the operative language?
Sure. Governance and Personnel Committee Resolution 11, Recommendation on Governance and Personnel Committee Charter Revisions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Governance and Personnel Committee hereby approves and recommends that the Board adopt the revised First Responder Network Authority Governance and Personnel Committee Charter as attached hereto as Exhibit A.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a motion from a member of the Governance and Personnel Committee that we adopt Resolution 11?
So moved. Darren Jones.
Is there a second to the motion?
Mike Rizzo.
Thank you, Chief. All in favor, please say aye. Again, this is it not, Janelle?
Sorry about that. I think I committed an administrative error on the committee.
Yeah, no problem. So, again, let's go back and make sure we've done this correctly. I'd like to hear a motion from a member of the Governance and Personnel Committee that we adopt Resolution 11.
Crawford so moves.
Noted, and I'd like to hear a second from Chief Carrizo. All opposed indicate by saying aye. Or, excuse me, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Madam Secretary, please make a note that the resolution has been passed and make the resolution available to the public following this meeting.
I will do that.
The board is now prepared to vote on Resolution 107, Governance and Personnel Committee Charter Revisions. In this resolution, the board adopts the amended committee charter. Before we vote, do any board members have any questions or comments about the proposed resolution? Hearing no comments, Madam Secretary, we're prepared to vote on Board Resolution 107. Would you please read the operative language?
Sure. Board Resolution 107, Governance and Personnel Committee Charter Revisions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the FirstNet Authority Board, having reviewed the recommended revisions for the Governance and Personnel Committee Charter as proposed by the Governance and Personnel Committee, hereby adopts the revised Governance and Personnel Committee Charter as presented by that committee, a copy of which is attached hereto as Exhibit A.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a motion from any member of the board to approve Board Resolution 107?
Paul Patrick, I move to approve.
Noted. May I have a second?
Blanker, second.
I'm sorry, please repeat.
Billy Hughes, second.
Okay, Billy Hughes seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please note that the resolution has been passed and make the resolution available to the public following this meeting.
I will do that.
Now I'd like to take a moment to introduce committee chairs for the upcoming year. Starting with our Advocacy Committee, we've already heard from Chief Rich Carrizo, who has been active on the Advocacy Committee, which steps up to the chairman's role with the departure from the board of Sheriff Richard Stanek. In addition, that's the only change for the Advocacy Committee. So thank you, Chief Carrizo, for agreeing to, in addition to your other duties, chair that very important committee.
Thank you.
Finance Committee, Brian Crawford, a long member of the Finance Committee, has agreed to assume the chairman's role in that committee. And in addition, Ed Horowitz, who was once the chair of that committee and obviously the board chair, has also rejoined that committee. And I want to thank Brian for agreeing to take on the chairmanship role, and also thank Ed for once again contributing to that important committee.
Glad to be there. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
In addition, Jessica Vernier from the Office of Management and Budget, Associate Director for Housing, Treasury, and Commerce, has joined the Finance Committee, and we look forward to her active participation. She brings a wealth of experience and very, very relevant experience to that committee. So thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
For the Governance and Personnel Committee, as we've already noted, we made a charter change there, the purpose of which was to allow someone other than the board chair to chair that committee. And Ed Horowitz, who has been a longstanding member of that committee, has agreed to assume chairmanship once again, and we appreciate that. It will free some of my time to pay additional attention to the work of the other committees, although I'll remain on the committee. Ed will be chairing it. Richard Carrizo also joins that committee, and Brian Crawford as well. Neil has been there for quite some time, and thank all of you for agreeing to serve on that important committee.
Thank you, Ted.
For Networking Technology, Neil Cox, of course, is the longstanding chair of that committee. Neil will continue in that position. Rich Carrizo also wants to remain on that committee, and I don't recall whether Darren was on board for the previous board meeting on that committee, but thank you, Darren. Darren Jones is our Executive Assistant Director for Security and Technology branch at the FBI and the member of Department of Justice on the board, and thanks, Darren, for agreeing to serve on this.
Thanks, Tip.
Okay, I'd like having dealt with some of those administrative notes, give the floor to Rich Carrizo, Chair of the Advocacy Committee, and he will in turn introduce some of our public safety partners who are joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from them. Rich, over to you.
Thank you, Ted. I'm honored so far to serve as the Vice Chair of the Board and the Advocacy Committee Chairman. Today I wanted to take some time and to highlight some of our public safety partners that are using FirstNet on the ground each and every day. We're glad to have these two speakers who are going to share their perspectives on how the network has been instrumental in serving their representative communities. Our first speaker is Mr. Michael Nix. He is the Georgia Statewide Interoperability Coordinator for the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency. His agency relied on FirstNet during their COVID response by using tablets at testing sites, and he'll be sharing some of those details with us. Our second speaker is from the Confederate Tribes of the Coville Reservation in the state of Washington. They utilized FirstNet StatCalled this summer and worked with our partner to enhance in-building network as their Emergency Operations Center dealt with the pandemic on the reservation. Our speaker will be Ms. Karen Condon. Also joining her today is Tiffany Circle, who has been part of the process with her. After all the presentations are given, members of the Advocacy Committee will ask questions of each speaker. We'll start with Mr. Nix. Mr. Nix, if you're on the call, if you could go ahead and start your presentation. And I'm hoping Mr. Nix was able to join us this morning. Okay, not hearing from Mr. Nix right now. I will turn it over to Ms. Condon for her presentation.
Good morning. This is Tiffany Circle.
Good morning, Tiffany. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. This is Karen Condon. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining this important call.
Thank you. Yeah, the floor is yours for your presentation.
Okay, so I just wanted to let everybody know that Joel is unavailable today, and so I don't have his presentation to share with all of you. So I apologize for not having that But if Mr. Nix is on the line, perhaps he can go ahead and give his presentation.
I don't think Mr. Nix was able to join right now. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about how you used FirstNet with your stat cult this summer and how it helped you all on the ground with your Emergency Operations Center.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. Okay. Hello, this is Tiffany again. So we used our FirstNet connections with earlier this year around the April timeframe when we had set up an Emergency Operations Center in the Keller, Washington area. And the thing about Keller, Washington is it's a very remote community. There's only a small amount of residents that live in that community, but they're surrounded by 2 mountain passes. And one of our major concerns was it's very limited cell phone service or any kind of wireless coverage. There's no broadband in the area. So when we set up the EOC, kind of like a satellite office for emergency response, we had noticed, because at the same time that this was going on, I guess the community was working from home, individuals were teaching their students from home, so the wireless connection that they did have through the AT&T service in that valley was very limited, and I guess you can say it was bogged down. So we started having concerns in case of emergency response because that is like I said, that is a very rural community, and like say for instance, our example, there was a need for transportation to a hospital. So any which way you go, it's a 60-minute round trip for a resident to get to a facility. So that was one of our major concerns when we requested this through AT&T FirstNet, was that we needed to enhance the communications for the public safety of not only our first responders, but for our residents in that valley. Another instance is actually just recently we had to stand up a sat cult for the Omak, Washington area. And if you're familiar with Washington, in the last month, we experienced a very traumatic wildland fire that started in the early, I think it was like September 6th it had started. And within 24 hours, it had burnt almost 70 to 100,000 acres and completely got out of hand. But what it had done, burning along this Highway 97 in the central Washington area, was it had taken out an entire wireless communication site, which was Verizon, AT&T Wireless. Not only the wireless side, it had taken out basically all landlines with CenturyLink in this area. It had taken down all broadband in this area. So we had became a very remote part of eastern Washington and had no communication for almost a 24 to 48-hour time period. And AT&T had came in, sat up a sat cult in the Omak, Okanagan, Washington area. It was at first a FirstNet sat cult for the first responders, but they had changed out some SIMs, and it became a public use situation. So that was great for us.
Excellent. Thank you. I do understand Mr. Nix is now on the call. Is that correct?
Yes. Operator, could you check to see if Mr. Nix needs to be pulled in? I got word that he is on mute, and I can spell his name for you and provide his phone number if that's helpful.
Thank you. Mr. Nix, if you can press *0, and I can get you added. Okay, one moment.
Thank you. My apologies to the audience for the confusion, but we'll get Mr. Nix on for his presentation shortly.
Michael Nix's line is open.
Thank you, operator. Good morning, Mr. Nix.
Hey, good morning. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Understandable.
Glad to be
we're ready
on.
for your presentation whenever you are.
All right, perfect. Again, my name is Michael Nix. I am the Executive Director of the Georgia Emergency Communications Authority. We're an independent authority which is housed at our state's Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency, and my staff is responsible we are the coordinating entity for 911, public safety radio interoperability, FirstNet, ESF2 communications, and alerts and warning for the state. So I serve as the state 911 director as well as the statewide interoperability coordinator. I'm really proud of the setup that we have in Georgia to have all 5 of these major pieces of emergency communications under one roof, and we've really been able to see the benefits of having unified coordination at the state level. Specifically with COVID-19, when we got started, we realized it was going to be a little bit of different of an event with us, and not necessarily a voice event, but more of a data event. So the state, our agency, as well as the state's Department of Public Health and the local public health districts have relied on the FirstNet and the FirstNet AT&T system for providing tablets and data devices between the tablets and data devices, over 400 devices around the state to assist with testing and registration of people that are coming to get tested for COVID-19. Also, at the beginning of the response, we had SAC Colts deployed to 2 different quarantine and isolation areas because the places that we had identified were great for quarantine and great for isolating COVID-19 positive patients, but there was very little cell coverage. And so within a few hours, we were able to have SAC Colts deployed at these various quarantine and isolation sites. Once we moved to a different, a more permanent isolation site, it had good coverage, but we needed data devices, routers, or something to be able to provide connectivity for the patients and citizens that were in isolation and quarantine. And during that time, it was when everyone was trying to get a hold of a Nighthawk router or a MiFi, and I worked with the FirstNet team to provision some Sonum devices that to provide data only, and so we were able to use those as hotspots for our COVID-positive patients. And then we used another SAC Colt again for a testing site that was out in a rural area that we needed to set up fairly quickly, and so we were able to get that turned around as well. Towards the end of July, beginning of August, there were conversations with the Department of Health and Human Services to bring in, and the CDC to bring in a federally partnered mega testing site, and part of the responsibility for the state was to provide connectivity. Within a day or two, the AT&T FirstNet team, they were able to secure Nighthawk devices and deliver those to just south of the airport, which served as the site of our mega testing. So we were able to utilize those devices to connect more tablets and computers through our partnered mega testing site with the federal government. And we've had a great communication team between our staff and the AT&T FirstNet team, as well as the state's contact with our public safety advisor with the FirstNet Authority. So that's just a brief overview of what we've done in Georgia and how we have our emergency communications team set up. So I'm open to any questions if there are any.
I appreciate that, Mr. Nix, and thank you also to Ms. Condon and Mr. Circle. I do know I saw some questions come in, so let me turn it over first to Mayor Billy Hughes, who's on our advocacy committee, who's got a couple questions.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning, Michael. Glad you could join us. A couple of minutes, that's a great overview. Can you give us some more idea and explain how you were able to adapt to a more data-driven COVID response? You know, things are being invented on the fly. And we've typically had a more conventional, voice communications type focused response. How is the data-driven component coming into play?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mayor. So early on we realized that the voice communications were not going to be as important with this event, and something that we've sort of picked up on as we've had other disasters was how important data is. And so something that we've done prior to this that really benefited us at the beginning was that we invested in a cache of Nighthawk routers to keep at the state that we could easily deploy down to an area that had okay service but needed more connectivity. And so we had that already in place, but increasing the number of hotspots and Nighthawk routers available to us was something that we prioritized at the beginning of this, because we knew that there would be devices all across the state that needed to be able to get back, and they weren't necessarily at the local public health offices. They were going to be at places where you could do drive-through testing, and they needed to be mobile for the weather as well. So we were definitely faced with something new, but I feel like we were able to go with what we learned in previous disasters and increase that and enhance that to improve our response to COVID-19 with data.
Okay. And with COVID, it looks like we're all really kind of responding and learning on the fly. But with respect to the SAT-COLT deployables, with the portable testing sites, it looks like you had very good response and was given just about everything you needed from a technological standpoint. You mentioned the Nighthawk routers in particular. But can you talk about the specific SAT-COLT deployment, how that went, and any takeaways, lessons learned that we might have moving forward?
Yeah, we were very pleased with how quickly we were able to get some SAT-COLTs deployed around the state. I've got a great relationship and maintain a great relationship with our AT&T FirstNet team, and as soon as we had a need identified, we were able to get them some pertinent details and able to get that out there within a few hours or within a few days. And it provided exactly what we needed, connectivity for not just the patients that were there, but it also provided connectivity for our first responders that were there as well. So it was critically important that we had that at the very beginning when there were a lot of unknowns at the first isolation site, as well as one of the early larger testing sites. We identified there was a horse arena that was a covered horse arena that was in a more rural part of the state that we needed to get set up fairly quickly. So having the SAT-COLTs deployed and have that get set up and help us take care of one of our hotspots of COVID-19, that was really crucial as well.
Sounds like that interoperability is crucial statewide, and when you deploy. And with COVID, we're going to see more of these, I'm certain, in all our states. Any takeaways, anything you would do different as far as deploying, future plans, those sort of things, lessons learned? Yeah,
however many hotspots or data devices we think we need, it's never going to be enough. So it's taking a look at the resources that we have at the state level and increasing that, because that's something with a data device like this, is that it doesn't matter what public safety agency or health agency you're with, everyone needs data just the same. And so it's making sure that we're prepared at the state level to be able to assist both first responders and health responders at the state and the local level. So we'll continue to build the state's cache of data devices, as well as encourage other state agencies and local health districts to do the same.
That's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you, Mayor.
It looks like we have Mr. Paul Patrick has a few questions also.
Thanks, Chief, and good morning, everybody. My questions are to Ms. Condon and Ms. Circle. When you mentioned about the 60-minute to hospital transport time, as I've worked in emergency medical services basically all of my life and still do, I can't count on the number of times that I've done that, and so I realize the importance of communication. So my question is, how has the FirstNet tribal consultation helped improve the communications between AT&T and the tribes?
With the tribal consultation, when we were approached with this idea for FirstNet and the AT&T partnership, it allowed us to actually voice our concerns about where we lacked coverage. So we had, prior to the FirstNet build that should be taking place here in the next year or so, we had 4 existing AT&T business as usual sites. So they upgraded those sites because up until last year, those sites were a 3G capability. So basically, you might have got some data and you had voice. So they upgraded that to a 4G LTE within the last 6 to 9 months. So that's been great. But if you want to familiarize yourself with the Colville Reservation, we're a land base of 1.2 million acres, and everyone likes to show the example of we're roughly the size of Rhode Island. So within the reservation, though, between each district, we have it split into 4 districts: Omak, Washington, Nisqually, Washington, Keller, and Chelim. So between all of those is mountain passes, and we experience all seasons of the year: summer, winter, fall, everything. We experience firestorms, winter storms, flooding, hot summers. Now we have a pandemic. And they're all remote communities. Every community besides Omak has to travel at least 60 minutes to an hour to 2 hours for any hospital. So when we were approached with this, we decided we got to a voice where we really wanted towers built. So one of the locations was in one of our far northeastern remote districts, which is in Chelim. It's bordered by the Columbia River. There's only 2 ways into this town. One of them, or there's 3 ways actually. One of them is the Columbia River. Then there's 2 highways. So at one point in time, this community had experienced major winter storms that allowed for major flooding. So, and then one of the things that with the Columbia River, the upper Columbia River, is that sometimes they draw it down. So at one point, the highway had broken into one area to get into Chelim. They only had one way out because then the river got so low they couldn't use the ferry anymore. So this community could be really isolated if it ever happens again. So we chose Chelim. That was great. I think it's set to build early next spring. It's going to enhance communications because there's a large winter pass that these employees here travel to work, and they come over 2 passes, so that'll enhance communications. One of the other areas that were chosen was an area called Elmer City, and I believe that will provide coverage to basically a dead zone that we've had for a numerous amount of years. So the tribal consultation has helped. We got to identify 2 locations that were concerning for the Colville tribe, and if I think about it correctly, it actually enhances the network. So once Elmer City's built, it enhances the Keller coverage, because the Keller coverage is still kind of poor even though we have a 4G LTE, because it's a very forested area with a lot of mountain ridges. So we don't get really great communication, so we're happy sometimes with what we get, but we're also, we lack a lot of coverage, and probably almost, I would say, 85 to 90% still of our land mass still lacks really great coverage, not only wireless, but even radio, 2-way radio coverage for public safety.
That's amazing. I know we can't see each other, but if you could see me now, I am just smiling from ear to ear, because it's great that the tribe has a voice and that voice can be heard. That does bring me to a second question, though. How does the tribe balance cultural sites, and I know the importance of that, with planning for new cellular towers and supporting infrastructure?
So with the cultural sites, the great thing about the Colville tribe is we have an internal committee, which is an Integrated Resource Management Plan, and on that Integrated Resource Management Plan, IRMP, if you will, we have everyone who sits on that committee. It's our TIPO, our archaeology department, history and archaeology, environmental department, forestry, range, water concerns. So when AT&T approached us, one of the things that I had given them was I had given them everything. I gave them our law and order code, which is a wireless telecommunications code you have to follow if you want to build here on the reservation. That we have our integrated resource management plan they have to follow. So we have codes that are established, and I told the individuals who approached the Colville tribe, familiarize yourself with this, because you're going to have to follow all of these rules that are set forth, and they've familiarized themselves with this, and not only do we have our internal tribal codes, we have federal regulations that we have to follow when it comes to this. So when we look at these mountain sites, a lot of these mountain sites are cultural. You know, they hold a lot of cultural aspects to people, to us people. And so it's great because if there's a concern, AT&T or whoever their contractors are who are going to build these sites, they work with our cultural team, and they'll go out there and they have meetings and they let us voice our concern, and they basically will build around our concerns at those locations.
That's amazing. I love the fact that you involved everyone. That's such an important part of this. Do you have any lessons learned at Colville that you could give that would help the other tribes? Because they are facing or will face some of those same issues.
I always feel like a lesson learned is if you don't have a code, build your codes for any kind of wireless communications. That way you voice how you want these sites constructed. Don't ever ask, have somebody who has the knowledge about tower communications and how they should be constructed and engineered and what the engineer is asking for from AT&T. We have to actually purchase that professional consultant who helps the tribe determine if the site that they're building and what they're proposing is actually going to work and if it's a legitimate engineered plan. So that's always something you should have in the back of your mind. Never not ask a question because you always want to answer and how do you get that answer? There's always someone out there who will give you that answer within AT&T or FirstNet, and building relationships and partnerships is like one of the greatest things that you could have because I have a great partnership with the AT&T side and I have a great partnership with the FirstNet, like the team solution person and the tribal liaison, things along those lines. Ask for future builds. Ask for, how can we look at this site in 3, 4, 5 years? What more can we provide? Build to capacity, because what we know here, to my knowledge and understanding is something that you proposed 6 months ago could be obsolete in 2 more years, 1 year. So always do that. Just never quit asking questions is one of my greatest things, and that's actually what has helped me a lot. FirstNet was totally new to me when I started this 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't know what it was. I wasn't into wireless communications, and so it's a great.
Oh, that's amazing. I specifically asked for tribes, and you answered that, but you also gave great advice for everyone in across the country for our network to have everyone ask questions. I really appreciate the two. You gave us 2 excellent things that we need to always remember to build relationships and partnerships, and those 2 will help us to continue to grow this not only on tribal lands but everywhere. I live in public health as well as emergency medical services, and I saved my COVID question till last. But do you have any specific examples of how has this network helped in Colville to support your COVID response activities?
So, like I stated, in this Keller area, it is one of our more remote areas, and I believe they used it for more data collecting for their mobile testing center. So that's how they proposed to use it, and that was the only instance that we had used it in an actual EOC COVID response was in the Keller, Washington. So it was more data-driven and voice because that entire area has poor communication for first responders and the temporary EOC center that they had set up over there.
Well, thank you. And for COVID, data is the most critical part of it as we first got into that response and will continue to be. You've given us some amazing information and insight, and I appreciate it, and thank you so much. Chief Crizzle, I think that's all the questions that I have. I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Paul. I'll open it up to the board. Does the board have any questions for our presenters today? Hearing none, I guess I want to thank Mr. Nix and Condon and Mrs. Circle for joining us today and providing us with some great information. It's always great to hear from the people that are using our services, whether it's good or bad. The board takes that very seriously to help us make decisions into the future. So thank you for joining us today. And at this time, I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks very much, Rich. I'd like to add my thanks as well. For those of us who spend probably way more of our time than we should sitting in air-conditioned rooms and looking at PowerPoint slides, it's good to be reminded of the world that our users actually live in and the challenges they face and the reason that we need to pay close attention to their feedback in every case because it's a harsh environment, it's a real-world environment, and it's really nothing like what we experience day to day in boardrooms and in our nation's capital. So thank you for reminding us once again of what the real world is like. Many of us would like to get back out there when we can, but in the meantime, we're going to depend on your feedback to make sure we're doing the best things we can to support you. With that, let's move to the next agenda item and get an update from Todd Early, the PSAC chair. Todd?
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to provide the board a brief on the great work that the Public Safety Advisory Committee is doing. First, I'd like to congratulate Tip and Chief Carrizo on their appointments as board chair and vice chair. On behalf of the entire PSAC and the executive committee, we look forward to working with you very closely, similarly as we've done with strong relationship that we've had with your predecessors. And I'd just like to take a minute to thank Ed Horowitz and Sheriff Stanek for their partnership and work with the PSAC and being there side by side with us to understand and hear the input that the Public Safety Advisory Committee has. So I'd like to thank both of you. And again, congratulations to Tip and Chief Carrizo on the appointments. We look forward to working with you and stand ready to help in any way that we can as the Public Safety Advisory Committee. Since the last board meeting, we've added 2 new PSAC members over the past few months. We're pleased to welcome Director Patrick Sheehan from the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency and also Dr. Lenny Wise from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. Director Sheehan is representing the National Emergency Management Agency, while Dr. Wise is from the National Association of EMS Physicians. As you recall, on previous board meeting, the National Association of EMS Physicians was added to the Public Safety Advisory Committee, and we look forward to working with both Director Sheehan and Dr. Wise and relying on their input and subject matter expertise as we move forward and close out 2020 and into 2021. Lastly, I'd like to provide you an update on the work that the PSAC's done in 2020 and the valuable feedback that the group continues to provide back to the FirstNet Authority roadmap domains to support future network investments. And I'd like to highlight a few of the activities for you and plans that close out our year. As you know, our work, we try to focus our work around these 6 domains and continue to provide public safety input into the roadmap. Regarding the core, this past January, the PSAC held the first of its bi-monthly webinars on the core roadmap domain and participated in a 200-level question via poll everywhere. Additionally, at the June business meeting webinar, the PSAC received an overview of the approved investment decision to make the FirstNet Authority 5G ready. Regarding the coverage and capacity domain, our tribal working group has dedicated much of the summer to discussing the coverage and capacity domain to ensure that the needs of Indian country and rural America are met when considering network investments. The tribal working group has also utilized Poll Everywhere along with the Qualtrics tool to capture feedback and input from the value members of that working group. Along with a discussion on the core at the June business meeting, the PSAC learned how the FirstNet network deployable fleet would grow following the improved investments that the board has made. Surrounding the situational awareness domain, the PSAC held its bi-monthly webinar for July, which was actually rescheduled to August to accommodate the PSCR 2020 conference. on location services, and the members reviewed the challenges to LTE-based location services and Z-axis technology solutions. I'd also like to take a minute to thank Derek Orr for his partnership with the PSAC and the valuable insight that he and his team of researchers really do there, and how they partner and work closely with the PSAC and everything they're doing to continue the research on this as well. Regarding the voice communications domain at the PSAC's December 2019 in-person meeting, PSAC members participated in Poll Everywhere question on the voice communications roadmap domain. The PSAC also received a briefing on the new push-to-talk solution at its bi-monthly webinar in May. On the secure information exchange domain, PSAC continues to make tremendous progress with its ICAM strike team in partnership with AT&T FirstNet. The strike team leadership anticipates the opportunity to brief the full PSAC on their work and discuss other topics within the secure information exchange domain at the PSAC's bi-monthly webinar in September. And lastly, on the user experience domain, the PSAC's March bi-monthly webinar discussed imminent peril and participated in Poll Everywhere questions on features and capabilities of imminent peril solution. They also discussed which situations responders would utilize the tool. In wrapping up, as always, I'd just like to thank the PSAC Executive Committee. We have great members on the Executive Committee, as well as the full body of the PSAC membership. They put in a lot of time and effort and hard work and dedication to support the FirstNet Authority roadmap and investment decisions. Look forward to additional opportunities to close out the year, and in 2021, planning for additional collaboration and partnership with the Authority to ensure the FirstNet network continues to best serve public safety. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for your continuing work on the committee, leadership of the committee. Welcome to your new members, and we look forward to staying very closely engaged with you over the coming couple of years to steer the direction of this network. There's a lot of exciting opportunities out there, but we certainly need your continued input, and mentorship and guidance to make sure that we're spending our time doing the things that matter most to the public safety community. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, sir.
Let's move now to updates from the FirstNet staff, starting with a presentation from the Advocacy Committee, and followed by a presentation from Network and Technology Committees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very excited to hear about how our field team has continued to engage in public safety and the data they've collected recently through this whole pandemic. I got to say that can't say enough thank yous and appreciation for the entire team of David Buchanan's team and all they've done and continue to do through this whole thing. As we know, with everybody being locked down, it appears that it would make it hard, but Dave was able to find ways to continue our engagements with all of public safety, and enough can't be said about that. So with that, I'll just turn it over right now to Neil Cox, Chair of the Network and Technology Committee. Unless Dave, actually, I think Dave's going to go ahead and speak right now.
Yep, thanks, Chief Carrizo. Yep, no problem. Happy to give you and the board a brief update here today. As we wrap up FY20, I wanted to share with you an overview of our efforts to engage public safety over the past 12 months. As you know, it's our job to build relationships with public safety, share information about FirstNet, listen and learn from first responders about their use and needs for the nationwide public safety broadband network, and then use that feedback to improve and enhance and invest in the network. This slide on the left shows the outputs from our work for this year. This year, like previous years, we are able to engage with all public safety disciplines at all levels of government and in all 56 states and territories. So continue to make an impact nationwide to all levels of first responders and public safety. When we close out the books on FY20 here at the end of the week, you can expect to see that we will have reached almost 1,200 engagements, over 30,000 stakeholders. So continue to keep up the drumbeat, even under the unusual circumstances of FY20, making sure we're reaching public safety across the country. This year in particular, I want to make special note of our effort to increase our capacity to deliver webinar engagements. In the 12 weeks since our last board meeting, we delivered 19 specific engagements in those 12 weeks, reaching 1,262 public safety professionals in 45 states and territories. We think this is an important way and an important improvement we've adopted. We'll be able to take forward in FY21 to reach new and additional first responders using technology and using webinars. So we're really excited about that opportunity. On the right-hand side of this slide, you see the outcomes of this work, of all these engagements. This is really the why we're engaging. The public safety inputs and the public safety feedback we're getting through those 100 engagements a month allow us to get feedback that allow us to inform solution enhancements you see on the right-hand side, continued evolution of push-to-talk, updates to FirstNet Central and FirstNet Assist apps, the creation and evolution of the network status map, new options for subscriber-paid subscriptions for extended primary users, and improvements and enhancements to the app catalog. All of these, to me, the takeaway we want public safety to get from this is that we're working for you. The First Responder Network Authority is working for public safety. We're using your feedback to improve and enhance and invest in your network, and look forward to being able to continue that work into FY21. On slide 16, I want to take a minute to talk about the roadmap, and we can move to the next slide, please. On the roadmap and how we've engaged public safety around the roadmap domains, and how the roadmap domains continue to be central to the topics and content that we're bringing to public safety. We're using the roadmap to bring specific topics around the domains, around technology, around public safety operations. And you see examples of the kind of data, kind of dashboards we're able to create to allow our team to improve and enhance the roadmap. We're able to target specific audiences using their public safety disciplines to reach focus groups and surveys and have one-on-one meetings with very targeted audiences of public safety practitioners, communication managers, emergency managers, command staff, and other influencers in the public safety field who can give us the most rich feedback about the roadmap topics. And finally, on the right side, really being results-oriented and results-focused as we go and do these engagements on specific topics with targeted audiences, ensuring that we've captured this information and use it to evolve and update our roadmap along with our interviews, data collection, our publication reviews, and our quantitative research, all contributing to our ability to update the roadmap and to make it timely and appropriate for the First Responder Network Authority and for public safety. Chief Rizzo, that concludes my comments, and I'll turn my time back to you.
Thanks, Dave. And again, I just can't thank you and your team enough for all that you're doing right now. At this time, I will turn it over to Neil Cox, Chair of the Network and Technology Committee.
Thank you, Rich, and congratulations on your appointment as Vice Chair. I mean, we're very, very lucky to have you because of your knowledge and experience, and more important, your dedication to FirstNet. So congratulations, and public safety is well represented by you as in your new leadership role at FirstNet. There's been a great progress and major program results to report since the last readout by the Network and Technology Committee in June. My committee held an excellent briefing at the beginning of September with the FirstNet technical staff. That session enabled the committee to provide strategic guidance to the FirstNet Authority's focus on engaging, influencing, and building the network and ecosystems in alignment with the roadmap, and to inform about future investments that we will be making into the network. In this briefing, Jeff Bratcher will provide a technology update focused on the following themes: recent progress in global standards, which is very important, differentiating devices available for public safety users, innovative applications and that provide solutions and operational issues faced by first responders, and progress in advancing public safety technologies through collaborations with other federal peers. I'll now turn it over to Jeff Bratcher, who will go into detail on these topics. Jeff?
Thank you, Committee Chairman Cox. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'd like to briefly discuss what's shown here on the slide 17. As the committee chairman mentioned, Third Generation Partnership Project is the key global standards body that we are actively engaged in with 5 dedicated staff at the FirstNet Authority on developing those specifications and requirements and ensuring those for public safety communications are in the committees and being worked on. As we briefed earlier this year in the last quarter meeting, the face-to-face meetings for these for the 3GPP, those were canceled starting in February due to COVID, but the teams and 3GPP have worked tirelessly to ensure they can maintain their aggressive schedule and that work is not delayed significantly. We are working diligently within those groups, and 3GPP defined a new way of working these standards groups during this pandemic environment. In June, we did share the completion of 3GPP Release 16 has happened, and its focus was on the mission-critical service enhancements, the mission-critical push-to-talk to land mobile radio interworking activities, as well as the vehicle-to-everything V2X support for some of the 5G services and device-to-device support. I'm happy to report that Release 17 work is now in full swing. They have targeted a December 2021 completion. And some of the work items that we are now focused on to benefit public safety communications in the broadband space are the enhancements to the building blocks for the mission-critical services over 5G, additional device-to-device direct and relay modes, the multicast broadcast capabilities, enhanced location-based services, and a recent addition, the non-terrestrial network support as well within 3GPP. We're also involved with ATIS and the Telecommunications Industry Association, working on those interworking functions and standards for the land mobile radio networks to the long-term evolution 3GPP and 5G networks. Significant progress has been made in that, and we're targeting the end of the calendar year 2020 for the Project 25 conventional and trunking features support in those standards bodies. Moving to the top right quadrant, as we noted earlier, there's over 200 plus devices now in our ecosystem, and over 159 of those which are now band 14 capable and leverage the dedicated spectrum that we are deploying. There's been an excellent growth in the missed list as well, and it continues to grow, and we've added 24 devices since our last board meeting in June. Clearly, our device ecosystem objective that public safety really gave a lot of input to us as we were developing the RFP. They wanted to have a broad, diverse range of devices that they could choose from for their communication needs. I think we've exceeded this objective and goal and are very fortunate that AT&T is able to drive this into the OEMs and have band 14 capabilities, as well as some of the unique features that public safety, whether your disciplines, law enforcement, fire, EMS need for those ruggedized type devices and other capabilities. Moving to the bottom left quadrant, the applications ecosystem. There are now over 100 plus applications in the FirstNet application catalog. And again, that catalog points to the respective application stores, whether it's the Google store or the Apple store. This list continues to grow. It has additional security vetting and other built-in mechanisms that we leverage to ensure those apps will meet public safety's needs for the FirstNet network. We've added an additional 10 since our last board meeting in June, and there's several recent additions that we're excited about. Moving to the right, over to the collaboration quadrant. Our collaboration with the Public Safety Communications Research Program at NIST is continuing, and we're supporting a new challenge that they've recently announced, and that is the Chariot Challenge. And this invites innovators to build augmented reality interfaces or Internet of Things, IoT, data emulators by participating in a multi-phase contest. Thus far, early stage winners and awards have been made to emulate smart city data for disaster scenarios. An additional 18 awards were made for building augmented reality interfaces for first responders. The next phase of this challenge is now underway, with teams participating in augmented reality prototyping with simulated Internet of Things data. And this final event, the culmination of this challenge is expected to happen in 2021. We're also continuing to work with PSCR and the U.S. Economic Development Administration on the Accelerate R2 Network Challenge, one of the exciting new initiatives that we're a part of. And this is a grant program with awards of $1 million was made in July to a public-private partnership consisting of the Orleans Parish Communication District. This was the public safety agency. The Western Fire Chiefs Association as a public safety association is involved. Rapid SOS was an entrepreneurial company involved in public safety communications, and Responder Corp, which is an early stage investor focused on the public safety communications area. This initiative will be creating a network to connect organizations and stakeholders involved in response and resiliency innovation, hence the R2 nomenclature for response and resiliency. This will provide avenues for the entrepreneurs to connect with like-minded individuals, companies, investors, and associations. And thus far, the awardees have been performing foundational work on an R2 platform consisting of the resources for the entrepreneurs to learn, an online portal for communication across different groups and companies, and a series of in-person and virtual events to bring the communities together. There should be an upcoming press release and a social media launch in the coming weeks. So this is a brief snapshot of the technology updates and activities the FirstNet Authority is involved in. I'd like to also briefly touch, Committee Chairman Cox, on some of the momentum and updates that the network, the nationwide public safety broadband network, has achieved. Again, we're over the 1.5 million connection milestone. There's over 13,000 public safety agencies and organizations that are now subscribed and using FirstNet on a daily basis. We're very pleased to report there's over 700 markets across the country that have Band 14 spectrum deployed, and that continues to grow as we move through our task order for radio access network build-out. I mentioned the apps and the devices. In addition to that, we also have 76 plus dedicated deployable network assets. Those are the satellite cell-on-light trucks, the cell-on-wings, the 3 flying cows that are now out there and being leveraged, and more recently, as several of you have seen and heard in the press, the FirstNet 1 aerostat deployable that was recently used in Louisiana in support of the hurricane. Over 450 times, public safety FirstNet subscribers have turned to the FirstNet Response Operations Group, the ROG as we refer to it, to provide support for additional emergency and planned events this year. That's just through August of this year. Hurricane Laura, Hurricane Sally, the wildfires in California, Washington, and Oregon, and over the last 6 months, the COVID response have shown the true benefit and power of this capability for the first responders and for public safety that need communications where there may not be communications. We're really proud that this was available for them and are continuing to grow that as we execute and build upon the Task Order 6 related to additional deployables that we're adding to that fleet. So with that, Chairman Cox, I will turn it back to you, and thank you for this time to provide you the update. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have any questions for Jeff or anybody on the Technology Committee? You know, it's amazing how far we've come from a piece of paper that we had a few years ago to over 1.5 million customers using this network throughout the United States and the territories. It's just an unbelievable accomplishment that we've been able to do for our first responders. And with that, since I hear no questions, I'll turn it back over to you, Tip.
Thank you very much, Neil, and thank you, Jeff, for that presentation. Let's move now to the Finance Committee update with Brian Crawford. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to say that I'm honored to serve as the new Finance Committee Chair. I want to thank you, Tip, and Kim for the time that you spent with me recently to provide background and details of the FirstNet Authority's financial landscape. As we move forward, I look forward to working with Kim, Tip, along with Ed, other members of the FirstNet Authority team, the Board Finance Committee members, and the rest of our board members to ensure appropriate financial oversight. And now I'd like Kim Farrington, the Authority's Chief Financial Officer, to provide a brief financial update. Kim?
Thank you, Brian. Good day, everyone, and happy fiscal New Year's Eve. I want to do two things today. And first is to give you an update on where we stand with our fiscal year 20 cumulative operations, and then want to look forward to our fiscal year 21 approach as we start our new fiscal year starting tomorrow. So to begin, what you see here are our cumulative operations for fiscal year 2020. While we are in our last day of the fiscal year, we are still closing our books and doing all those operational financial execution transactions that need to be done before the day is out. But as of August 31st, we had actually utilized $71 million of our $77 million budget through October 1st through August 31st of 2020. That put us at about an 8% variance, but as expected, the last month of the fiscal year is where we have a lot of obligations that catch up, and that is occurring this year. And we are looking to close the end of fiscal year 2020 forecasting at about 3 to 5% variance. So doing well with regard to our operations execution for fiscal year 20. What I'll do now is just share with you that the audit that we're undergoing right now is going very well, and we have nothing to report with regard to our operations from a financial standpoint. And now I want to talk to you about looking forward. Since tomorrow is the new fiscal year, 2021, just wanted to remind the board of our budget for 2021. You may remember that you voted on and approved the budget for this upcoming fiscal year just last month, but thought with all these numbers I'd share and remind you of what our budget looks like overall for FirstNet Authority. So looking to our 2021 budget, we have $83.5 million set aside for operations, and this just supports the ongoing operations of the FirstNet Authority. We also have $45.9 million set aside for reinvestment in 2021, and these funds will support emerging features, our functionality, the coverage that is evolving to support our public safety users. And lastly, we have our fiscal year 2021 reserve that sits at $83.5 million. And this reserve is to support the contingency needs that we may need in support of the FirstNet Authority, the NPSBN itself, and public safety. So I will close, but offer that I'll take any questions anyone may have, and just want to wish everybody a happy new fiscal year tomorrow. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Chair Osterthaler.
Thanks very much, Kim. Congratulations on closing out a very successful financial year and financial planning process for next year. With that, I think we come to the end of our committee briefings, but we would like to take a moment to hear from our CEO, Ed Parkinson, any points you may wish to make as we prepare to close out the meeting. Ed, over to you.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate the time, and good afternoon, good morning to everyone who's listening in. In closing, I'd just like to say thank you to the entire board, again, for the opportunity to lead this amazing organization. We've got an incredible group of people at FirstNet who are dedicated to the mission of serving public safety. And we have a board that reflects that. And again, I'd like to echo Tip's sentiments and thanking Ed Horowitz and the rest of the board for the continued support and to wish Ed well over the next 12 months in his new role on the board. In the past 6 to 7 months, since we've moved from in-person engagements to this virtual environment in which we all find ourselves, you've heard from how Dave Buchanan and our public safety advocacy group have risen to the occasion. We have an incredibly strong CIO group under the able leadership of Jim Gwynn, and they've been able to serve the staff at the FirstNet Authority to ensure that we don't skip a beat. This really does echo the sentiments that we will always be there for public safety, and our people have been there to support the authority throughout these past 6 months. When it comes to public safety, we're meeting public safety where they are to ensure that we continue to gather this invaluable feedback to advance our roadmap, which will further guide our programs, activities, and investments. At the same time, we continue to support public safety's use of FirstNet by ensuring lessons learned and successes continue to be shared with the community. From the various disasters you've heard us speak about today, from support for COVID-19, and from future issues that public safety is going to have to face. We recently marked the 19th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, which really serves as a genesis for public safety's movement to establish the dedicated, interoperable, nationwide public safety wireless broadband network that we have today. And it's understanding how public safety is going to evolve their mission that buys in and frankly feeds the culture at FirstNet. Just last week when I testified before Congress, I really mentioned to the Senate how our culture at FirstNet is to listen, learn, and evolve. We're constantly striving to improve and to do things better. Ultimately, public safety's lives depend on our ability to get the job done. And it's something that we take very, very seriously. So it's the foresight of the public safety community, the innovative framework from Congress that set us on a path to make where we stand today. You heard from Jeff Bradshaw earlier today the numbers that continue to join the FirstNet network, and we look forward to making that grow. We look forward to serving public safety, to serving new subscribers to the network to ensure that their expectations are met, both in terms of the service that they enjoy, but most importantly, the customer service that they can receive from the FirstNet Authority. I'm very proud to be working with a dedicated board and a FirstNet Authority team who understand that this network is needed now more than ever and is committed to its advancement for public safety. So once again, thank you, Tip, for having me here today. I appreciate the time to make a few words and look forward to the year ahead.
Thanks very much, Ed. And thank you to all the members of the FirstNet staff for the preparation for today's meeting, and in particular to Janelle Smith, who's the board secretary and has been invaluable in helping me transition into the job, but also preparing us to have effective meetings in this virtual environment where we've been forced to live. Thanks, Janelle. I really appreciate your assistance every day.
You're very welcome.
With that, we have concluded the agenda, and I will entertain a motion from a board member to adjourn.
This is Neil, so moved.
Darren Jones, second.
To adjourn. And we have a second from Darren Jones. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Are there any abstentions? Hearing no abstentions, the meeting is now adjourned. Thanks to all of you who participated in the combined board and committee meeting, and to the audience who joined us over the phone and on WebEx. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you for your participation in today's conference. Please disconnect at this time.